can. We'll be working hard.
University of Tennessee needs this person to input data, that's a statistics degree.
We hire people with strong backs and weak minds.
Hey, they've got it posted $86,000 a year.
Is there another paper for
That's the
Ginger?
degree I have.
It's over here somewhere.
And it's a hybrid job, you do most of the data entry from home.
It's like those jobs on the commission,
Yeah.
and stuff, you just post them around.
Well, I
Okay.
have to go to
We're not
it.
posting them.
To be good with that.
So, Ginger, you got your paper?
Uh-huh,
You got your pen?
I have,
That's good.
I am ready.
Because what I'm about to ask you ain't on it. What did we do? What did we talk about last week?
Responsibility.
The finder.
We want. What did we talk about last week? I didn't hear. Right.
Responsibility.
Okay. What else?
Bounding.
If you're going 1 hour, you're not telling people about it.
Okay. Anything else we covered last week? After last week, did anybody, anything you studied this week you would like to share? Or something else you dug into after last Friday night of study? I'll let you study some information here for just a moment before we go any further.
I run into something strange.
Okay.
The people I work for, the woman was we was having kind of a conversation on how the shape the world was in. And I asked her, well, what kind of, y'all belong to a certain church, go to a local church? And she told me, and I never had heard this before, but they're affiliated with the Pentecostal Church of Philadelphia. And I never had heard that, and they don't have no local. I never had heard of the Pentecostal Church of Philadelphia.
Did they say how they go or attend?
Well, they try to listen on TV, send all their tithes and money to Philadelphia, to the head church. But she said there's only about a couple of people in Lee County that are the same affiliation. But the closest church, local church is in Elizabeth. So they don't go there. But that's what I never had heard. And they observe Saturday as the Sabbath. And I never heard of Pentecostal church doing that. Well, that's what I thought.
There's another church, I don't remember what its denomination is, but it's in Tazewell near Frosty Creek. That has they have church on Saturday.
So does the
And
guys
there's
that
people-
own this concrete shop on
Yeah, their people comes from
closed on Saturday.
Knoxville, Morristown, everywhere, and Tazewell is the central location for all members to meet at. So that's in the middle distance of all these people that are driving. It used to be in Morristown. They moved it to whatever building is beside the Frosty Creek. But they're coming from Morristown, Knoxville. I know one in Pineville that goes there. And a lot of times when me and Roger are over eating in Tazewell on a Saturday, I'll see them. They'll come in and talk to me because I work with one of them. And but whatever church it is, I don't remember. I can never remember the name of it. But whatever belief it is, they're coming from so far and abroad to it. That's the middle location to come to that. But they have it on Saturday. I just don't remember what the belief is. So, anybody else have anything you studied or looked into since class last Friday? So we're going to. Nobody has anything? Your brains are so full of information it can't get about 4 inches down to your mouth. Come out. It's stuck.
It got hot.
We're going to take you all to the cath lab and open that up, stent it, so that way we can get it open and get it out. Anyway, so we're continuing on something. We've been studying on heaven and looking into some things about heaven lately and some things that are tied to and connection from heaven. And now we got a new one that this one's going to be an abstract for you. But tell me what your definition of this word is.
Hunger.
Huh?
Hunger.
Okay,
It's pitiful.
okay. But what is your definition of starvation?
No food.
Huh?
No food.
Okay.
Well, a lot of cricket garden.
Anybody else?
Gordon, Valley Forge is our healthy rice, so that's no nutrition, so
Mhm.
they have food, basically.
So you kind of have to look at this in perspective here for just a moment. Starvation is the point of dying. Okay, when you are in true, what I call true starvation, you're practically dying. Okay, difference than starving or starved is starvation. And when you look up and really study true starvation, for someone to have true starvation, they are at the point of death. That's how far they got into. Because how many in this room have said, "Let's go get something to eat, I'm starving"?
Yeah.
All right. And was any of you in any medical harm when you said that? Zero. Zero. That's it. So, you know, so that word so loosely, fluently used, and we relax at that word, and then we see these images, and this is just an example of what we always see in commercials or advertisement for foreign mission work, anything like that. You'll see something about the starving children in whatever country, and blah, 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 blah. But you know what's funny to me? If you Google starving people in America, you won't hardly find any pictures. There's none. There's no images. If you look up starvation in America, you will find almost zero imagery of anything related to starvation in America. And when we look at some things regarding what happens when you truly are, per se, in starvation, we're way past the point of being hungry. Okay, that was a long time ago. We are way past the point of needing something to eat to feel like we're not hungry anymore. That left a long time ago. We are at the point when we say that we are true starvation. This is the point when you have lost your muscle mass to the point that you don't even have the strength to get up and do anything because you have no metabolism in your body to get your muscles to metabolize and be able to produce any muscle mass, strength, coordination, balance, anything along those lines are all affected. So tonight we're going into something a little different. We're going back to our heaven study, but a little bit different. So if you want to turn, you can. I'm going to show you the verses. But we're going to look at a few verses first in Exodus 16. Now, let me catch you up to our story right quick for just a moment in the Bible of a time when the children of Israel was bound in bondage of slavery in Egypt. For how long?
500 years, 400.
Okay. Anybody else want to throw a number out there? How many years were the children of Israel in bondage in Egypt?
70?
Huh?
70?
Well, I don't know. I need to make notes.
Says 40 right there.
Huh?
35 says 40 years.
Verse 35 says what?
40 years.
Okay, but that's not in Egypt.
That's when they were in the wilderness.
That's it. That's not in Egypt. I don't know. You tell me. I'm asking you all. You're the people I'm asking. I'm just asking you all. So, if we study and look up bondage in prison or in bondage of slavery in Egypt, the time frame should be at 400 years. Okay, 400 years. But we're picking up after they've got out of bondage. Moses and Aaron's leading the people, and we're going out of Egypt, and we get to the wilderness. Okay? And when we get to the wilderness, we're going to start with these verses first in Exodus 16, then I'm going to back up just a couple verses we want to read. And the Bible says in Exodus 16:31, "And the house of Israel called the name thereof manna. And it was like coriander seed, white, and the taste of it was like wafers made with honey. And Moses said, This is the thing which the Lord commandeth, fill an omer of it to be kept for your generations, that they may see the bread wherewith I have fed you in the wilderness, when I brought you forth from the land of Egypt. And Moses said unto Aaron, Take a pot, and put an omer full of manna therein, and lay it up before the Lord to be kept for your generations. And as the Lord commanded Moses, so Aaron laid it up before the testimony to be kept. And the children of Israel did eat manna 40 years, until they came to a land inhabited. They did eat manna until they came unto the borders of the land of Canaan. Okay? Now we're going to back up and read 3 verses earlier in this same chapter. And when the dew that lay was gone up, behold, upon the face of the wilderness there lay a small round thing, as small as the hoarfrost on the ground. And when the children of Israel saw it, they said to one another, It is manna. For they wist not what it was. And Moses said unto them, This is the bread which the Lord hath given you to eat. This is the thing which the Lord hath commanded. Gather of it every man according to his eating, an omer for every man, according to the number of your persons. Take ye every man for them which are in his tents. Now let me say one thing real quick. What we want to say before we go any further is that where the Bible tells us that the children of Israel, in this chapter and just before it, they go out into the wilderness, and when they get out there, the first thing they say is, You brought us out here to die. You're going to starve us to death. We laid in slavery in Egypt where we could eat from the pots of flesh and the bread until we were ready to bust. And now you set us free and tell us to follow God and set us free, and we're out here, and now we ain't got nothing to eat, and we're going to starve to death. And we get all these things we're talking about. In the last few weeks, we've been specifically talking about things from heaven. We've been talking about heaven, we've been studying about heaven, and we're talking about things from heaven. Now let me show you, in Psalms, even David wrote Psalms a little bit about the manna. And he said, Though he commanded the clouds from above and opened the doors of heaven, and had rained down manna upon them to eat, and had given them of the corn of heaven, man did eat angels' food. He sent them meat to the full. Even the Bible records the manna that fell from heaven as even being recorded and labeled as even what David called angels' food. So I want us to think in our minds, if we go back, and I just want you to think about this. Let me show you this right here. I'm going to take an estimation here of an omer. Biblical estimation of an omer in modern day times would be roughly 2.5 quarts or 10 cups. Okay? 2.5 quarts or 10 cups. That's an omer. Now, the Lord instructed them that they were to collect an omer for every person according to his eating. And I want you to get in your mind the image and thought of this manna laying out on the ground just after the dew has come off the ground. And you've got this image, because this image I want you to have up here in your mind of something that came from heaven. Now, just as much as you think about, how many people have heard that of great things come in small packages? How many people have heard that? Great things come in small packages. Well, let's look at this for just a moment. We're going to see some things about what really is good that comes to us from heaven, and some things I want you to see just so simply coming from this manna that fell to the ground. So first of all, let's get in our minds a very interesting thing. Do you know that if we take numbers by history, it tells us that there were approximately 2 million people with the children of Israel that fled Egypt. Now, how many people's in Middlesbrough? Huh? No? How many's in Middlesbrough?
Probably about 30,000.
Bell County don't have 30,000 residents.
12,000.
Huh? Claiborne County don't have 30,000 residents. Huh?
12,000.
Okay?
4,000.
Middlesboro's 12,000, 13,000 is what they've been floating. Claiborne County's got like 28,000 people in it by residential capacity census. So you take this county, 30,000, and you spread this to 2 million that has left Egypt where they eat all the bread till they're ready to bust. They're setting out in the wilderness. In their minds, they've been taken out into the wilderness to starve. Now you see this number down here. This came to me the other day, and I want this to get in your mind for just a moment, some things. The Bible records this about manna, that God fed them every day. The manna that fell from heaven, God fed them every day. For how long?
40 years.
40 years. God fed roughly 2 million people for 40 years. If I take one catching of manna every day for 40 years, God distributed 29 billion meals in 40 years. Before in Joshua chapter 5, when it mentions the ceasing and the stopping of the manna that fell from heaven after they made it to the promised land, if we take 2 million rough people number, and I'm just using that number as the example, and we take that for 40 years of distributing manna, God distributed over 29 billion meals to feed those people. And you think about how much manna. Now, the Bible recorded it as a small round thing, is what it was recorded as in Exodus 16. So there's a few things about what comes from heaven that God demonstrated in Exodus 16 that we need to be paying attention to. And here's the first one. When did the manna fall?
Morning.
First thing in the morning, right? That's when they were to go out and collect it. After the dew had come off the ground, they were to go out and collect it. Do you know that if you start your day off with the Lord and what He provisions for that day, if you start your day with the Lord and what He provisions for that day, then your day is going to go so much better. Where, at the time, you think about it, that all the way through, the instructions were in the morning time, you were to go out and pick up the manna. You were to start your day with what God provisioned and provided for you. You think about that, and how many times Tony sings the song, "When I Start My Day With You, There's Nothing That I Can't Do." Although sometimes the tempter tries to bring me down, when I go to Him in prayer, I know He'll meet me there. I can make it through the day if I take the time to pray, and I start my day with you. Well, that's interesting, because in Philippians 4 and 6, you're to be careful for nothing, but in everything, what are you supposed to do? Prayer and supplication, make your request be made known unto God. Wouldn't it be kind of foolish if we did that at the end of the day? That seems kind of dumb, don't it? I think so. I mean, you go to the Lord and pray at the end of the day after you fought with the devil and had havoc and everything else, and God's provision your needs for today. That's the time when we were instructed to start the day. All right, let's look at something else with this manna right here. Here's something else to think of. So, where was the manna? Where was it at? On the ground. But it wasn't in their tent. Is that not true? Manna was not in their tent. They had to go get it. Is that not right? Well, one of the things that's interesting is the same thing in Matthew 6 when He tells us that they don't sow anything, neither do they reap or gather into barns, but yet the Heavenly Father feeds them. But you got to get out. The bird that gets food is not dropped into the nest. Mama has to fly out of that nest and go get the food. The birds have to fly out of the nest to go find the food. You have to get out of your comfort zone of habitual, as I call it, for the Lord to be able to feed us. We have to get out. We have to do some things. Now I want you to think about this. In the wilderness, also some desert land where the children of Israel were, before we get into manna anymore, let me get you thought about this. They grew no gardens. Kroger's did not exist. They had no Walmart. Okay? They pitched a tent while moving through the wilderness for 40 years. There was no stores. There was no farms. There was no cultivation. There was no gardens. And especially in the desert, there was no water. The Bible records it as being bitter, if I do recall it correctly. So they didn't even have nothing they could drink that was satisfying or quality enough for them to even want to take part in. It wasn't there. But yet, God, in those 29 billion meals, provided manna. And the manna that came from heaven. But they had to go out and get it. If you laid in your tent till noon, what happened? You starved, wouldn't you? If you didn't go out and pick the manna up, what happened? The Bible records what happened in the sun. What happened to it? It melted. Yeah, it's gone. So if you don't get up and go out and get it, it will be gone. Your daily provision from heaven that God gives us each and every day, if we don't go out to pursue it, it's just spoiled. It goes out just like the day. All right. We'll look at a few other things here for just a moment. If you want anything from God, then you got to get rid of everything of yourself. You think about that for just a moment. If you want anything from God, you got to be able to get rid of the things of yourself. Do you not think if you're in a land where you have no food that you're not going to be hungry? What do you think? It's hard for us to even discuss this in the room when we all can eat anything we want when we want. But if I take you to a desert and drop you off in the middle of it, where you have nothing, and the manna's going to fall on the ground every morning, are you not going to be hungry by the time it comes back out tomorrow? There's no refrigerator to step at 10:30 tonight and get something out of it. There's no pantry to go get your cheese crackers out at 11 o'clock tonight and get your pop out of the fridge. It ain't there. Get that into our minds that hungry is one of the things that we come for and where it's at. One of the things that's interesting about what we deal with, the things that come from heaven, is what he says in Luke 14. And that is that for whosoever shall exalt himself shall be humbled. You think about that. If you humble yourself before the Lord, he will be exalted and lift you up. But if you go in to exalt yourself, then the Lord's going to have to humble you. And it's better that we come to him hungry for the manna or the things from heaven than to go in and exalt ourselves in what we look at. Even one of the other things mentioned. Here you go. Let me give you another example. Now look this one up. It records manna as being a small round thing. Well, if we take that in biblical character of what the Bible teaches us about anything, let's first start with the Lord himself. The Lord himself came by the mother. Who was his mother? And what was her status in the community? What was Mary's status in the community?
She's a virgin.
Mm-hmm. Was she famous? No? Did she have a really special talent? Did she do something she was known for? Does the Bible record anything about Mary that puts her name out there at all? Zero. The Lord came in the smallest and humblest of ways, because if we look at it in our modern day times, Mary was a nobody. If we really look at it for what it was, Mary was a nobody. And we see, just the same as it says in Philippians 2, that thought it not robbery to be equal with God, but made himself of no reputation, and took upon him the form of a servant, and was made in the likeness of men. Being found in fashion as a man, he humbled himself, and became obedient unto death, even the death of the cross. You know, practicing of humility is everything, from the time that the Lord was born to the time that he died and rose again. Humility was all practiced. But do you know, let me ask you one question. What did Jesus own while he was here on the earth? What did he own? Nothing? Anybody know anything he owned? Roger said he don't own a thing.
He owned it all,
Okay, but what did he own? Because everywhere I looked when I got to thinking about the manna from heaven and the humility of him coming such in a small part to the earth, one of the things that's interesting is that he had to borrow a boat. He had to borrow an upper room. He had to borrow a cross. He had to borrow a tomb. What else did he have to borrow? Yeah, ask Colt, what else? He had to borrow a lot of things. in his humility of while he was here and just a small person. Somebody so great and can do such great things didn't own anything. Didn't have nothing. Didn't have nothing at all. And so the smallness of the manna, that small round thing recorded in Exodus 13 or 16, tells us just the limitations that God coming to the earth in himself and man of humility and poverty. Now, we get to looking at what God gave 2 million people over 29 billion meals in 40 years. And we need to learn a few things from that. One of the things is this very famous scripture in Matthew 6 is that don't be like the ones that just say all the vain repetitions and a bunch of fancy words. But he says, the Father done knows what you have need of before you ask him. And he's given you the way to pray. What is the first thing in the Lord's Prayer? Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Here we go. What's the next one?
Give us today our daily bread.
Our daily bread. Well, think about it. Children of Israel got that. The manna from the bread from heaven. And they were served that every day. Our prayer in our life is supposed to be, give us this day our daily bread. You know, God don't really like for us to waste anything. And really, if we want to teach portion control, God was good at it. Because the Lord even told them how much they were supposed to collect off the ground per person. And the Bible records some of the crazies that decided they'd pack up some extra and they put it in their tent, and what's the Bible say happened? Yeah, the maggots started growing. They got worms in the tents. It started souring and stinking in their tent. Well, you know, God gives you what you need. But then our carnal mind says, oh no, that ain't enough, I need more. That ain't going to do me for today. That's not enough, I need more. And we hoard, and we pack, and we keep, and we start doing all these no-nos. And what happens to it? It spoils. It spoils. You think in your mind how foolish we are, or I think how foolish we could look to God in a lot of ways when in the mind I'm sitting there thinking, God gives you what you need, and you say it's not enough. God gives you what you need, say, I need more. God gives you what you need, and you say, that ain't going to work. That's not going to make it. I'm not going to make it with what you gave me. And in our minds, 2 million people in the wilderness are being fed a little white wafer that tasted like honey that laid on the ground every morning that they collected 10 cups per person. Now, don't let your eyes get too big for your belly. Anybody ever heard that? If you, growing up, got a plate set on the dinner table, because, you know, most of us ate dinner every day at the table. Not anymore, but most of us, we ate supper at a certain time every day. Do y'all eat supper at a certain time every day at the table? And if your mom put whatever on your plate, what happens? You ate it, right? And if you piled the plate full, what was you going to get to do? You're going to eat it. Our eyes get so big for our belly that we think we need this heaping pile of food or spiritual food. Let's go to the bread from heaven for a moment and what we think we need. And so we look at thinking of this moment. Now, we're talking about the things that come from heaven. Have you ever thought of the fact that every day is a new day? Okay? If God gave you something every morning for your day, you have just been given a fresh revelation from heaven. Every day. Whatever God gives you is a fresh revelation from heaven. And if you look at all the things that He desires to replenish us with, you think about how many people wants to eat the same thing every day for 40 years? Better yet, pick something you don't like to eat and let's eat it every day for 40 years. You think about that for just a moment. How are you going to like it so good? But when we get into what we need and what God is supplying us that is coming from heaven, and you think about what God put on the ground for these people for 40 years, we start looking at all these things that God starts telling us that everything we're doing, give us this day our daily bread. Here's an example of another one in Philippians 4 that we all know, this so very famous verse. What did He tell them to do? He told them that you even collect an omer of this. You collect the manna, put it in the omer, and this is going to go into the ark. They put it in the ark. Why did they put it in there?
As a remembrance.
As a remembrance to the generations to come. And what was that remembrance in layman's terms? What were we supposed to do with that in the ark? What's the purpose behind that?
To know where the substance come from.
Okay. So we had Aaron's rod, commandments. We had an owner of manna in the covenant. And all these things that was represented when it passed over and went to the promised land, all these things was to tell the previous generations what?
What God done for them.
What God had done for them. A sign that God took care of them for 40 years when they couldn't even do it themselves. Ain't it funny how that the slaves of Egypt got out and couldn't even feed themselves in the wilderness for 40 years before they made it to the promised land? What do you think Christians would be today with no spiritual leading? Huh?
Starved.
Okay, what do you think the world's like with people in it today that know nothing about Christianity or live no spiritual life? What do you think that's about? What condition are they in?
Starvation.
Huh?
Starvation.
Yeah, they can't even feed themselves. They know nothing but what they see right here, and it's so close to us. Everything about us matters. If God did not intend on taking care of His children, He would not have set them free out of bondage out of Egypt and put them in the wilderness for 40 years and not have the intent or plan to take care of them from beginning and day one. And one of the things that you got to think about for a moment, we said that the manna fell outside of their tent. So they had to get out and collect it. Is that not right? Every day, God provides something for everybody. And no matter what your need is, God provides it. If you get out and go get it. Now, when I say that, what does that mean? How do we go get what God provisions for us every day?
Read the word.
Huh?
Read the word.
So if I take this Bible, let me ask you a question. If I take this Bible and I put it under my pillow, and I put my pillow on, I sleep on it every night, will I absorb it? That won't work? I think people are trying it.
I've heard people do it.
Yeah. There's other people that say they sleep at night with it on their chest. Will it absorb that way? No? So that won't work either? So how do we get our daily provision from heaven? Huh? Okay. Okay. Well, one of the things you got to first do is practice the Beatitudes. And one of those Beatitudes is what gives us the very thing that we look at when we're talking about our manna, the bread that comes from heaven. And we're going to look at this even further in just a second. But I want you to think about this just the same as the birds are fed and the food don't fall in their nest either. Who is going to be able to eat for you?
No one.
Nobody. Who can say your prayers to God for you? Nobody, okay? Who can get saved for you so that you go to heaven? Nobody, okay? What about who could live your Christian life out for you?
Nobody.
Nobody? So that means that you have to get out to get your provision, what God has set aside for you this day, your daily bread. And if we look at some things, we go on now. Let's think about this in the Bible. Let me give you a real quick thing to think about the Bible. The Old Testament says that He's coming. Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John says He's here. Acts says I'm going away, and the rest of the book says I'll be back soon. That's it, in a nutshell. But when we look at the manna from heaven being the image of Christ and what it tells us, John chapter 6 is where He goes into the red letter special of telling them that your fathers eat manna in the wilderness and they're dead. Oh no. Wait a minute. They eat the manna in the wilderness, now they're dead. This is the bread which cometh down from heaven, that a man may eat thereof and not die. And then in 51, we get one of our famous words that we've seen before. Moses even got some of these famous words. we get back to the ties of the great I am. The living bread which came down from heaven, if any man eat of this bread, he shall live forever. And the bread that I will give is my flesh, which I will give for the life of the world. We've got to quit asking for more bread on earth. Think about this for a moment. The Jews and all these other people thought that the bread, the manna that they heard that fell from heaven, that was a wafer that tasted like honey, they thought that was so good that they wanted more of it. And the Lord was standing right there. But they're asking Him to give them more manna. How much do we live our lives each and every day that we are seeking more of the world and the temporary pleasures in it than looking for the bread of life to give us this day our daily bread? Does He not say we are to lay treasures up? Where? In heaven. Where does our provisions come from God? In heaven. We see how much we are temporal, and our brains and our carnal minds wants to lead us down the carnal pathway of everything being temporal. But just as He told them here, your fathers eat it, and they died. If you keep living off of your daily provision of what you want to do, how you want to live, how you want to proceed in life, and you don't take from the start of your day the provisions that God sets out before us, what happens? Let me get it this way. If you're diabetic and you continue to eat cake every day, what happens? Huh? You die. You're killing yourself, and you are dying. You are putting yourself in the direction of going on. And in John 6, a little more in that chapter, He says, who is the bread of life? He gives you the second, I am. In the same chapter 6, a few verses before, He tells us that I am the bread of life. He that comes to me shall never hunger. He that believes on me shall never thirst. So I want you to think about this for a moment and how we live our lives. Access to heaven. We get access to heaven and its benefits now, today. But then we get this one famous verse that comes right back to us that we know so well. And here it is. When the manna laid on the ground every morning, it was a substance, was it not? Manna that fell to the ground was a substance that came and was a substance. You have to choose every day one of two things. And this is where our fact and our fault is with what comes to us from heaven. What are you living in if you don't start your day with the Lord and take God's daily provisions for your life? What are you living in? Anybody know? Let's go back to the manna for a moment. What happened when they didn't collect on the day before the Sabbath 2 days worth of manna? What happened? Huh? What?
They laid it up for Saturday.
If they didn't collect it,
They starved.
they didn't get none. None fell on the Sabbath. They were instructed the day before to collect enough for 2 days, that it would not spoil. But if they did not do it, what happened?
They starved.
There again, they went hungry. And they went right back into it. Without substance, you will starve. Without the manna collected, a substance, they would starve. Can you live 40 years without anything to eat? No. Most people aren't going to make it 40 days. You have to have substance to live. And He says, I am the bread of life. Meaning, I am the substance of which you live. I am the bread of life. He that believes in me will never hunger or never thirst. The substance that keeps your life living is the very thing that we should be starting our day with, the provisions from heaven. Because when we don't, here's what you're doing. In Colossians chapter 2, it tells us this. Let no man therefore judge you in meat or in drink or in respect of the holy day or of the new moon or of the Sabbath day. Here we go. Which are a shadow of things to come, but the body is of Christ in Colossians chapter 2. If you're not living of the substance of what God gives us, you're in the shadow. You are nothing but in the shadow. Now let me ask you, would you rather eat a hamburger or be in the shadow of the hamburger? Would you rather live in a house or outside in the shadow of the house? The substance that you need in your life, you either get it and go with it, or you wait and go your own way. You don't start your day getting what God has provided you. In Matthew chapter 6, he says you're not to take no thought for when? Tomorrow. And you're not to worry about what you're going to wear. Donna don't have to worry about her hairspray. You tell her I said that. And, you don't have to worry about nothing to go on tomorrow. What you're going to wear, what you're going to eat, because it's going to do what?
Provide.
It's going to take care of itself. The things tomorrow will take care of themselves. But the birds even are fed by the Lord. For 40 years, 29 billion meals were provided to over 2 million people. But yet we can't start our day. One day. How many times do you think people in America, just America, well, Claiborne County, let's just start Claiborne County. How many people do you think get up and plant their feet on the floor, get ready, and go out the door storming into the world to work with not one thought of preparation of it? Almost all of it. Almost all of it. If you ask most people, let's just say church people, Christians, whatever you want to label them as, what you do every morning before you start your day, it ain't with the Lord. Most of them say, well, I'm late for work, my alarm didn't go off on time, I had to get up, throw my hair together, put my clothes on, went out the door, and I was at work, I forgot about lunch, I didn't bring lunch. The day is so scattered, and it's them past, and they come home, and they sat down at home with jet lag, trying to even remember what they did today, because it was so chaotic crazy. Where was God? Where was the substance, the bread of life? Where was the substance that they need to live? Where was he at through all that?
Shadow.
In the shadow. It's nothing but a shadow. And you're living in the shadow at that point. That's really where it's at. We have so much bread of life. Are you ever going to starve? Well, think about this. Did Moses ever tell the tribe of Dan, I'm sorry, but today we're running short. We've had a shortage of manna. We're going to ration. You're only getting half of an omer today. Did that happen one time in 40 years? Zero. Did anybody go hungry because there wasn't enough? No. If you went hungry, it was because why? You didn't go get it. Thank you. You didn't go get it. That tells me all I need to know that there's not one person today living that could not access to get whatever they needed for today. Because God promised that he would provide. But what are we doing to go get it? There's a lot of people sitting in their tents. And some have got maggots crawling because they stored a bunch of stuff up. They had a good church meeting with Steve 3 weeks ago, and they're still living off of it, still thinking about it. They ain't come back to church yet. They're still living off that good church service when it's already spoiled. I'm not supposed to be looking back and holding the cloud, and I'm not supposed to be worried about tomorrow. God said the things of today. And the first part of his prayer that he teaches us to pray is, give us this day our daily bread. Who is that daily bread? That's it. And he provides it all. So something so simple. White represents what in the Bible? Purity. He came as a spotless lamb, the Bible records. He came of a virgin birth. Came to the earth and lived so that we could be, well, actually you can even say that God came and became a man so that we could become the sons of God. And all through that, and what we learned, that small little round white thing, I look at it and kind of think in my mind, what's them things people wear on their necklace that's got a little picture in it? What's that thing called?
I like it.
Yeah. You know where it's got that little, I kind of think of manna being the same thing, of something from heaven falling with a picture in it, of God showing us that he will provide. I can't fathom in my imagination how many meals God provides, over 29 billion in 40 years. And not one person can say they were hungry because there wasn't none there to get. Not one person had ever a problem with being able to have access to it. What's the problem? Us. God provisions your day before your feet have hit the floor. But how many are running face first, wide open, right out the door? And you think about this. This happens to everybody in everyday life. How many people you think go out the door with the plan of just going out, doing their thing, and coming back home? That's a normal everyday plan? How many you think never get to do that? Something happens on that day. They have a heart attack, car wreck, anything. But something happens on that day that just natural cause, anything. Something happens that day. And they don't come back home quite like they left it. And they've spent all that day. And at the end of it, looking back, they didn't start and go out and get their manna. They didn't go out and get what fell from heaven and start with their daily provisions. And this is what our people look like now. This right here is what our Christians today look like. It's been said, it's been preached, it's been taught all over in churches that churches all over this area, right where we're at, are starving. They're starving. Well, it's not medically starving. They're not missing a meal. Nobody in this room is literally starving from missing a meal. But what they are doing is they're walking every day in their lives in the shadow. The manna's laying down there on the ground. Lord put it out there. They've just went right on through it and went on about their day and their way. And they've never one time went to pick it up. And pick up the manna, or the bread of life, as we call it. They've not one time picked it up and started the day as God commanded them to go out and pick it up, get their portion, and did it say any of them went hungry before the next round? No? None? They don't mention it, does it? You think about it, if you started your day right, you start your day just like they did, and you go out and you find the Lord first, and get your day started right, how much different of a day you're going to have. How much of a different day you're going to have. All from the manna that God provides. We don't have a white wafer that tastes like honey falling every morning out here on the ground when the dew rises. We don't have that. But spiritually, is God not putting the manna down every day before your feet hit the floor? Every day the manna's done laid out. You're fed every day. Spiritually, you are fed every day. But how many people are sitting in their tents not even getting up and going to pick it up? They're not going to go pick it up. They're not going to go get their daily portion or their provision, and they choose to just live in the shadow. And that's what we've got when we look at the people in our lives today, is faith is the what? Substance of what we hope for. The substance of what we hope for. I don't know what you're hoping for in your life and what you're looking for in your life. But I can tell you I can divide it into two categories. It's temporal or eternal. That's the only two things it's going to be, temporary or eternal. And that's either the substance or the shadow, whichever one you're living in every day. That's where you're at. Anybody else got anything they want to add or something that you'd like to say tonight?
Most people don't know what life is.
Huh.
Most of you Christians don't even know what life is.
Yep.
St. John 17:3.
Yep, that's true. Anybody else? Y'all are being quiet. Real quiet. Roger's even being quiet. Anybody else got anything tonight?
Your house will hold me.
Huh?
The manna was to sustain the body.
Uh-huh. Yep.
It wasn't for the life.
No. No. And God provided until when? Joshua 5, I think 12 is when he talks about the manna stopped. But until they got there, he provided it. For 40 years, he provided it. Not one time did he miss it. He didn't slack. He didn't say, I'm tired today, I don't want to do it. He didn't say, oh, I just don't feel like it, I think I'm going to wait till tomorrow. None of that. But yet every day that's provided to us. Every day it's provision for us. God provisions for us every day.
The good thing about that is, there is no limit.
No.
Were they on, being a homer, what more than that's living for us every day.
Endless supply.
God teaches us His mercy for new every morning.
Mhm.
What do you have for us spiritually? We don't have to,
Mhm.
have as much of it as we want.
Yep.
And, but unfortunately, we don't want very much of it. It just seems like, but we can have as much of it as we want. There's no limit. Glad that step out of that tent, get that, so it didn't fall in the tent.
No.
So we have to get outside of this flesh. If we want what God has for us spiritually, we gotta crucify the flesh and, come to the Lord humbly and seeking that spiritual food. And we're too busy making provision for the flesh, so do that. But I'm thankful there's no limit on that. We can have as much as we want.
Mhm. Anybody else? The manna that fell from heaven. I can't find the verse I'm looking for.
They got to where they complained about it.
Yeah.
They went to Moses and our soul loath the spread. They got tired of it. And, didn't have to do anything. Just walk out there and get it. They got tired of it.
Mhm. Yep. Anybody else?
You know, you said earlier about, being in a good service and not show up for a month. It seemed like it don't take much of us to do it if we want to go. We,
Yeah, in Lamentations 3:22, it is of the Lord's mercies that we are not consumed, because of his compassions fail not. They are new every morning. And you know what the last of that verse is? Great is thy faithfulness. In Lamentations 3. So God's giving it to you every day. Every day. He's giving it to you. What are you doing with it? That's the thought. Just what are you doing with it? We are being given something from heaven, provisioned every day. God provisions us every day our daily need. What are we doing with it? Do we just loaf our day about and go about our routine as we normally always do and do our thing and not think a thing of it till something gets our attention? Or are we going with the Lord first, starting our day with the Lord first, and taking that provision, our omer of collected things God's gave us, and that's all we need. You may think you need more or less. That's it. That's all you need for today. And if you read Matthew 6, you'll see how much that he lines it up with the manna from heaven when he says, take no thought for anything about tomorrow. You look at the birds, they're fed. How much greater are you? If he cares about your every need, head to toe, he cares about your every need, head to toe, and he's done set the provision out, then what are we doing with it? That makes you wonder a lot right there. Just not talking about Sunday church service like I brought up, just Friday. Today's Friday. We've done been in this day, if you got up at 8 o'clock this morning, 12 hours. God's provided provisions for 12 hours of your awake time today. What have you done with it? That's always something to think about right there. Is we waste a lot of things. We waste a lot of time. God didn't want waste. What did he do with the manna when daylight hit it after so long? It was gone. God didn't need to have you storing up a bunch of stuff for tomorrow. He provided today. That's what you needed. You got it. Tomorrow, there'd be more. I just wonder how many of those children of Israel, and this is me speaking in my mind, I've thought about this. I wonder how long they went before they really trusted it. I mean, I just humanistically think the first few days they's like, oh, this ain't gonna last. You know, if we're going to eat on this few days and still starve to death, this won't hold us over. The carnal mind of the children of Israel would go that route. I wonder how long it took for them to realize that, oh, he's going to do this, and this is going to work, or he's going to do what he says he does. It's working. Because only one day, the Sabbath, they could store up yesterday and today, or 2 days' worth, the day before the Sabbath, and it wouldn't spoil. But if they did it any other time, it burns, and it started to stink. I wonder how long it took them before they started realizing that God would supply their every need according to, yeah. I mean, you think about that, and we kind of act like, well, I don't want to say we act, we kind of are dumb. I'll just put it plain. We're kind of dumb in some things sometimes when we don't have to be. You know how many people are blindsided by the Bible? When if the whole time they've been reading and studying it, they'd be like, oh, I knew that. You know, instead of looking at us with the face they make sometimes. But I wonder how many people walked up there and looked at that man and says, I ain't eating that. I had steak, even as a slave. We got to eat goat and pig. I ain't eating that right there. It's something white laying all over the grass. Or the desert sand. I'm not eating that. Think about that. Every day we do that. We're in that shadow. If we don't pick up what the Lord gives us and go with it, and we just go on about our daily life without getting His provision for the day, that's what we're doing. We're living in the shadow. Anybody else got anything tonight?
Talking about people that you said like the sparrows and stuff the Lord feeds, and they don't go in the barn. And like He supply our every need. Our need is not our wants.
Right.
Everybody
Can't separate the
not
two.
satisfied, but their eyes not satisfied.
Mm-hmm.
Our needs are not satisfied because we're looking at I want.
Mm-hmm.
Even if you had the fanciest car you could have, your eyes say, well, they've got something else, I want that one too.
Mm-hmm.
And everybody's ever satisfied, even though He supplies our every need. If you think about how many times the Lord supplies your need, but yet you feel unsatisfied because He ain't satisfied your wants.
Mm-hmm.
So many, like I say, so many people are trying to satisfy their want and not satisfy them. The Lord satisfies our needs,
Mm-hmm.
but it's never our wants. Everybody just wants their want.
Yeah,
More.
that's right. Anybody else?
I'm thought about that. Well, as we went through the wilderness, you talked about water earlier. The water that they tried to dig or run up on, the natural water was bitter, but every time they looked around, there that rock was.
Yeah. Yeah.
Falling from the start of that rock was. There was water
Flow.
that come from that rock that satisfied.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, can you imagine every time you look around, there's that rock? And, but I'm glad that, you know, our rock is next to us always. He never leaves us nor forsakes us.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm glad He gave me a drink that I'll never thirst again. And I'm standing on that. And, but I thought of that a lot. Every time I looked around, no matter how far they went that day, I looked around, there's that rock. And,
How many times during the day or during the year, or whatever, month, week, whatever, that God has supplied your need, and you get to the end of the day and you see what's ahead of you, not what you need is the Lord to provide, but He ain't done that yet.
Mm-hmm.
He's provided your need. How many times you look back and said, well, I don't know why I'm worried about what I ain't got. He done gave me everything I need.
He's right there.
Yeah, and He's right there, and He done gave me everything I need.
Yeah.
But my mind's still going back, I got, this is all coming, the world's coming down on me. I got this, the world's closing, the world's closing in on me. I need this, I need this, I need this, Lord. Never thinking, as I say, at the end of the day, thinking back, Lord, You gave me everything in abundance of more than what I need. Shaken down, pressed. But we thinking, no, Lord, You didn't supply what I wanted, so You ain't done. Yeah, You've done above and beyond.
exceedingly abundantly,
above.
more than we could ever ask for.
But we never look at it that way. We just look at, like, say, if you got debt, you say, I don't know what I'm gonna do, Lord. This comes in your life, I don't know what I'm gonna do, Lord. But at the end of the day, I supplied everything you need. But we don't never look at it that way.
Do what you can do and then stand, is what we're supposed to do, is
Be anxious for nothing but when thanksgiving and supplication and prayer.
I think
We always do that supplication and prayer, oh, Lord, Lord, Lord. And you ever just say, thank you, Lord. You know, you sung that song, I just want to, been my helper, even, been my brother, just, can't remember how it goes.
I don't remember what the name of the Bible. It's a Bible study thing that people do, and I can't remember what it's called. But have you ever heard of where they read it backwards? You ever heard of it? I can't remember what it's called. But if you take Matthew 6 as the example of what we're studying now, I'm going to go just a couple verses in reverse. I'm going to read them backwards. Now, this is the very thing we talked about, and the Lord said. He said, "Therefore I say unto you, take no thought for your life, what ye shall eat, what ye shall drink, nor yet for your body, what ye shall put on. Is not the life more than meat, and the body than raiment?" Now, let's go backwards. The verse before it. "No man can serve two masters, for either he will hate the one and love the other, or else he'll hold to the one and despise the other. Ye cannot serve God and mammon." The next one in reverse. "But if your eye be evil, thy whole body shall be full of darkness. If therefore the light that is in thee be darkness, how great is that darkness?" And the one right before it, "The light of the body is the eye. If therefore thine eye be single, thy whole body shall be full of light." The one right before it, "Wherever your treasure is, there what? Your heart be also." Okay, but right before it, "But lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where neither moth or rust doth corrupt, and where thieves do not break through nor steal." Then we get before that, "Do not lay up for treasures yourselves upon earth, where moth and rust do corrupt." We step backwards. We see the manna first. If God comes first, and you go backwards in studying those verses, then we get to no problem with serving two masters. We have no problem with the body being full of darkness. We have no problem with laying up treasures for ourselves on earth that were moth and do corrupt. If we start with the manna, the starting of the bread of life, and you go backwards, you eliminate all the problems. All the problems are eliminated if you start with the bread of life. That's all we have to do. We have access. That is from heaven, whether you believe that or not. God provisions from heaven every day for your needs. On earth, as it is in heaven. "Give us this day our daily bread." So we see provision that God has laid out there and set for us. If you don't have the job you want, if you don't have the things you want, it might not be what you need today. Is that not true?
But we don't want that.
We don't want that. But God's provision, yeah. And so, that's when you see the fact that when we're studying on heaven, and the thought came to me when I was thinking about the man, and I just was sitting there thinking about that image of seeing that white, that round like substance, that white, and it being the substance of their living. You can eat anything on this earth, and I guarantee you're going to get hungry again. You will. No matter what Steve eats today, he will get hungry again. But not one time out of what God provisions and feeds us do we go back and say, "Lord, it was not enough. I did not get enough. That will not do me. I will not have enough." Because he that hungers and thirsts shall be filled.
you ever hear somebody said, "Well,
I shouldn't have said
I'm so full, I probably won't eat that no more," but you do.
We're a few hours later.
Well, the day's out.
You
are.
get a snack.
Yeah. So we really do things in the wrong order sometimes when we look at it, but if we don't have to wonder about if God is going to. That's my point. One of the things we're failing at in our daily lives is the worry and thought failure of believing that God will do it. There's people all around that just questions that. They don't have the faith enough to believe He will. One of the key things He said when your fathers eat the bread, they died, is His next words, I am. That's not a question. There's no debate. Yeah, there's nothing to question and debate about that. You go to court of law all day you want, it won't change. It does not change. It's us and this thing right here that wants to whipple it around. But if we take what God gives us, it's enough. It will do. It will last. Anybody else got anything to know?
So many people think of it as, the Lord satisfies my soul, by saving me, I'm saved. But all this other, I've got to get that, I've got to do it. No, He said He'd supply all of our needs.
Yeah.
So man looks at it, eyes never satisfied, like say.
Uh-huh.
I'm trusting the Lord to save my soul when I got died, when I laid when He put my eyes and put them together.
Mm-hmm.
But they wasn't trusting to supply all their needs as they walk this world.
Mm-hmm. That's right. Anybody else?